Only legends hit that far, General Morrison declared, his weathered hands gesturing toward the distant ridge that seemed to shimmer in the afternoon heat. The words carried across the range like a challenge thrown down before the assembled marksmen, each syllable weighted with decades of military experience and the kind of certainty that comes from watching countless attempts fail against that same impossible distance. Lieutenant Sarah Chun stood at the back of the group, her rifle case balanced against her shoulder, aware that I had briefly assessed her before dismissing her entirely. The general's statement hung in the air like smoke from a discharged round, and she could feel the subtle shift in attention as conversations resumed around her, voices dropping to murmurs that weren't quite meant for her ears, but weren't exactly hidden either. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you've witnessed similar moments where someone had to prove themselves against impossible odds in your area. Sergeant Williams leaned toward his companion, his voice carrying just enough to reach nearby listeners. Think the rookie even knows what she's looking at out there? That target's been laughing at expert marksmen for 6 months straight. The other instructor nodded, already shifting his attention back to the experienced candidates who stood closer to the firing line, their gear worn smooth by years of use, and their stances speaking of familiarity with weapons that could reach beyond normal limits. The range stretched before them, like a proving ground designed by someone who understood that legends weren't born from comfortable distances or forgiving conditions. Heat waves rose from the concrete, distorting the air above the shooting positions, while the target itself sat perched on that distant ridge like a challenge that had defeated more experienced shooters than anyone cared to count. The wind flags dotting the course told a story of shifting currents and unpredictable gusts that could turn a perfect shot into an embarrassing miss. Chun shifted her weight slightly, her eyes tracking the same path that dozens of veteran marksmen had studied before taking their attempts at glory. The general's words echoed in her mind, not as discouragement, but as a simple statement of fact that she intended to test. Around her, the other candidates were already discussing the technical challenges, their voices mixing confidence with the kind of respect that comes from understanding exactly how difficult the shot would be. Major Rodriguez approached the group with a clipboard thick with documentation, his expression carrying the weight of someone who had witnessed more failures than successes at this particular range. The statistics are not encouraging, he announced to the assembled shooters. 47 attempts this quarter, with a success rate that falls well below what we typically see on standard courses. Even among our most experienced combat veterans, this distance has proven challenging in ways that conventional training doesn't always prepare you for. The rookie felt the weight of those numbers settle over the group like a blanket of expectation, but not the kind that inspired confidence. Instead, it was the sort of mathematical reality that made reasonable people reconsider their chances and perhaps choose a more achievable target for their official qualification. She watched as two of the more experienced candidates exchanged glances, their faces reflecting the kind of calculation that comes from years of knowing when to push limits and when to accept that some challenges might be beyond current capability. Captain Foster stepped forward from his position near the equipment shed, his voice cutting through the afternoon air with authority earned through decades of training marksmen who thought they understood the limits of their abilities. The target distance is 1,500 meters, he called out, his words carrying across the range with the precision of someone accustomed to delivering information that would determine whether careers advanced or stalled. Wind conditions are variable, temperature differential is significant, and the elevation change creates additional complications that most standard training courses don't incorporate. Chun absorbed the technical details while watching the faces around her, noting how experience translated into visible concern among shooters who had successfully completed dozens of challenging courses. The distance wasn't just about marksmanship. It represented the kind of shot that separated good soldiers from those whose names got remembered in stories told years later around mess hall tables. 17 pairs of eyes surveyed the range, each person calculating angles and compensations while the general's words continued to resonate like a prophecy that most of them expected would prove accurate. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the shooting positions, creating patterns of light and darkness that would shift throughout the qualification period, adding another variable to an already complex equation that had humbled experts. The rookie adjusted her grip on the rifle case, her fingers finding familiar comfort in the worn leather handle that had traveled with her through every training course and qualification exercise. Today would be different, not because the target was closer or the conditions more favorable, but because she carried something that statistics and experience couldn't measure. The quiet certainty that legends weren't born from backing down when the distance seemed impossible. The training facility had earned its reputation through decades of humbling shooters who arrived believing their previous successes guaranteed future achievements. Concrete barriers marked firing positions with mathematical precision, each station positioned to provide identical sight lines toward challenges that remained constant while the shooters facing them changed with each rotation of candidates. The morning sun cast sharp shadows across the range, creating contrast patterns that would shift throughout the day, adding temporal complexity to spatial challenges that already tested the limits of human capability. Staff Sergeant Brooks moved between the positions like someone who had watched hundreds of confident marksmen discover the difference between reputation and reality. His clipboard contained documentation of every attempt made at the legendary distance, numbers that told stories of experience meeting limitations in ways that conventional training rarely revealed. The success rate holds steady at 12%, he announced to no one in particular, his voice carrying the weight of statistical certainty. Most attempts fall short by margins that suggest fundamental miscalculations rather than minor adjustments. Lieutenant Chun observed the range configuration while listening to conversations that revealed how veteran shooters approach challenges that separated professional competence from the kind of performance that created lasting reputations. The equipment available represented the finest technology that military budgets could provide, yet the target remained stubbornly resistant to technological solutions, demanding something that advanced optics and precision ammunition couldn't entirely supply. Corporal Martinez leaned against the spotting scope, his posture reflecting years of watching confident shooters discover that distance amplified every small imperfection in technique until minor flaws became decisive factors. Saw a master sergeant try this shot last month, he mentioned to his companion while adjusting the scope's focus. 23 years of experience, multiple combat deployments, expert rating on every standard course. Missed by 18 inches and walked away shaking his head like he'd never seen a rifle before. The rookie absorbed these details while examining the firing positions that had witnessed more failures than successes, noting how each station provided identical opportunities while offering no excuses for performance that fell short of legendary standards. The concrete beneath her boots held the weight of countless attempts, and she could almost feel the accumulated expectation that pressed down on anyone who stepped up to challenge the distance that had become a benchmark for measuring exceptional capability. Major Davis approached with the deliberate pace of someone whose experience included watching promising careers stall against challenges that revealed the difference between good and extraordinary. The environmental factors here create complications that most indoor ranges can't replicate, he explained to the assembled candidates. Wind patterns change throughout the day, temperature variations affect ballistics calculations, and the target placement incorporates natural obstacles that simulate combat conditions rather than controlled training environments. Chen watched as several experienced marksmen nodded with the kind of recognition that comes from previous encounters with similar challenges, their faces reflecting understanding that this qualification would test abilities in ways that comfortable practice sessions never could. The legendary distance wasn't just about technical skill. It demanded the kind of performance that emerged when preparation met pressure under conditions that offered no margin for the small mistakes that indoor training often forgave. The equipment shed contained rifles that represented decades of advancement in precision shooting technology, each weapon carefully maintained and zeroed to eliminate mechanical variables that could provide excuses for missed targets. Yet the statistics remained stubbornly resistant to technological solutions, suggesting that the legendary distance demanded something beyond equipment specifications and ammunition tolerances. Sergeant Thompson examined his rifle with the methodical attention of someone who understood that perfect equipment couldn't compensate for human limitations when distances stretched beyond comfortable ranges. Been shooting for 15 years, he confided to another candidate while checking his scope adjustments. Qualified expert on every course the Army offers, but this distance makes me feel like I'm starting over from basic training. The target looks like a postage stamp from here, and the wind conditions change faster than you can adjust for them. The rookie listened to these assessments while maintaining the quiet confidence that had carried her through previous challenges, understanding that legendary distances required more than experience or equipment. Around her, conversations continued to reinforce the mathematical reality that most attempts would fail, creating an atmosphere where success seemed like an exception that proved the rule rather than an achievable goal for determined preparation. Captain Williams studied the range through binoculars that revealed details invisible to naked eyes, his expression reflecting years of watching confident shooters discover that legendary distances transformed reliable marksmen into struggling beginners. The target placement incorporates every challenge that makes combat shooting different from range qualification, he observed while lowering the binoculars. Elevation changes, wind patterns, heat distortion, and distance that stretches ballistics calculations beyond comfortable margins of error. Chun felt the weight of these challenges settling over the range like afternoon heat, but instead of discouragement, she found herself calculating solutions to problems that had defeated more experienced shooters. The legendary distance represented opportunity rather than obstacle, a chance to demonstrate capabilities that conventional qualifications couldn't measure and that skeptical observers didn't expect from someone whose service record contained more potential than proven achievement. The shooting range stretched across terrain that seemed designed to test every assumption about manageable distances and predictable conditions. Concrete firing positions marked intervals with mathematical precision, but the space between the shooters and their target told a different story entirely, one written in heat waves and shifting wind patterns that transformed confident calculations into desperate approximations. The legendary distance had earned its reputation through decades of humbling experts who arrived expecting their experience to translate into inevitable success. Betting pools had formed with the casual efficiency of soldiers who understood that entertainment could be found in measuring the gap between confidence and capability. $20, says the rookie, doesn't even get close, muttered Private Johnson, while pulling bills from his wallet with the certainty of someone investing in mathematical probability rather than gambling on unlikely outcomes. His companion nodded, while adding his own contribution to the growing pile, their conversation audible to anyone within hearing range of the equipment area. Lieutenant Chun adjusted her rifle case while absorbing these financial predictions of her failure, noting how easily veteran soldiers converted her upcoming attempt into entertainment that assumed disappointing results. The betting reflected more than casual amusement. It represented collective judgment based on years of watching the legendary distance defeat shooters whose credentials suggested certain success until the moment they pulled triggers and discovered that reputation provided no protection against mathematical reality. Sergeant Patterson emerged from the range office with documentation that contained the names and scores of every marksman who had attempted the legendary shot during the current quarter, his clipboard thick with evidence that supported skeptical assessments of rookie chances. 47 attempts since January, he announced while flipping through pages that recorded more failures than anyone wanted to acknowledge publicly. 3 successful hits, all from shooters with combat experience exceeding 10 years and expert ratings on advanced courses that most soldiers never even qualified to attempt. The statistics created an atmosphere of respectful impossibility, where the challenge represented something beyond normal training progression and into territory reserved for exceptional performers under perfect conditions. Chun listened to these numbers while examining the range that had generated such humbling data, understanding that mathematical probability suggested her attempt would join the majority of documented failures rather than the extraordinary minority of recorded successes. Master Sergeant Cole positioned himself near the spotting equipment with the deliberate placement of someone whose experience included watching confident predictions crumble against distances that amplified every small imperfection in technique until minor flaws became decisive factors. Saw Colonel Harrison try this shot last spring, he mentioned to anyone within listening range. 30 years of service, multiple deployments, instructor certification on advanced marksmanship programs. Missed the target entirely and spent 20 minutes checking his equipment like the rifle had malfunctioned, instead of accepting that some distances demand perfect execution. The rookie absorbed these stories while noting how easily veteran shooters accepted failure as the expected outcome when facing challenges that stretched beyond comfortable ranges. Around her, conversations continued to reinforce the mathematical reality that legendary distances separated good marksmen from those whose names appeared in training manuals and reference materials that documented exceptional performance under extraordinary conditions. Staff Sergeant Williams examined wind indicators that dotted the course like warning flags, each device providing real-time information about atmospheric conditions that changed faster than human reactions could accommodate. Wind patterns here shift every few minutes, he explained to the assembled candidates while pointing toward flags that showed different directions across the range. What reads as a 5 mph crosswind at the firing line might be gusting to 15 miles per hour at the target, and temperature differences create thermals that push bullets in directions that scope adjustments can't predict. Chin studied these environmental factors while calculating solutions to problems that had defeated more experienced shooters, her mind working through ballistics equations that included variables most training courses treated as negligible complications. The legendary distance transformed minor atmospheric variations into major trajectory influences, creating shooting conditions that demanded perfect timing and flawless execution rather than the comfortable margins of error that shorter ranges provided. The target itself sat perched on the distant ridge like a challenge that had watched decades of confident attempts fall short of legendary performance. Its position chosen to incorporate every natural obstacle that made combat shooting different from controlled training environments. Elevation changes affected ballistic calculations in ways that flat ranges couldn't simulate, while natural wind patterns created atmospheric conditions that transformed reliable marksmen into struggling beginners who discovered that experience had limits. Captain Morrison approached the group with the measured pace of someone who had delivered disappointing news to enough confident shooters to understand that mathematical reality eventually defeated optimistic predictions. The target dimensions are standard military specifications, he announced while consulting documentation that contained technical details about the challenge ahead. However, at 1,500 meters, those specifications translate into visual challenges that test equipment capabilities as much as human skill, and environmental factors amplify every variable until perfect shots become statistical anomalies rather than achievable goals. The rookie felt these words settle over the group like late afternoon shadows, but instead of discouragement, she found herself analyzing problems that represented opportunities to demonstrate capabilities that conventional assessments couldn't measure. The legendary distance demanded more than experience or equipment. It required the kind of performance that emerged when preparation met pressure under conditions designed to reveal the difference between good soldiers and those whose achievements created lasting reputations. Escalating doubt rippled through the assembled marksmen like heat waves rising from the concrete, each conversation adding weight to collective certainty that the rookie's attempt would join the statistical majority of documented failures rather than the extraordinary minority of legendary achievements. The range had become a theater where experience prepared to witness another confirmation of mathematical probability, with veteran shooters positioning themselves to observe what they expected would be an educational demonstration of why some challenges remained beyond rookie capabilities. Instructor warnings multiplied with the systematic precision of safety briefings that covered every possible failure scenario, each caution designed to prepare inexperienced shooters for disappointment, while protecting the range from liability when confidence collided with mathematical reality. Major Rodriguez consulted his documentation while addressing the candidates with a measured tone of someone who had delivered similar speeches to dozens of hopeful marksmen who subsequently discovered that optimism provided no protection against ballistics physics. Lieutenant Colonel Barnes approached with clipboard documentation that contained comparative analysis of rookie performance versus veteran achievement across multiple distance categories, his data supporting skeptical assessments with mathematical certainty that left little room for optimistic predictions. Historical records indicate that shooters with less than 5 years of service maintain a success rate below 3% on legendary distance attempts, he announced while scanning faces that reflected varying degrees of confidence and concern about upcoming challenges. Chun listened to these statistical predictions while examining equipment that represented the finest precision shooting technology that military budgets could provide, understanding that advanced optics and precision ammunition couldn't compensate for human limitations when distances stretched beyond comfortable ranges. Around her, veteran marksmen nodded with recognition that came from previous encounters with challenges that revealed the difference between good performance and exceptional capability under conditions that offered no margin for error. Comparative assessments continued with relentless mathematical precision, each evaluation designed to establish realistic expectations while protecting inexperienced candidates from disappointment that could damage confidence in future training progression. Sergeant Major Thompson reviewed performance data while explaining success patterns that favored extensive combat experience over academic qualifications, his analysis suggesting that classroom knowledge provided inadequate preparation for challenges that demanded instinctive responses to atmospheric variables. The betting pools had grown, with additional contributions from spectators who arrived to witness what they expected would be another confirmation of legendary distance difficulty. Their financial predictions reflecting collective judgment based on decades of watching confident attempts dissolve into frustrated acceptance of mathematical limitations. $50 says she doesn't hit the target frame, declared Corporal Martinez while adding bills to the growing pile with casual certainty that suggested investment in probability rather than gambling on unlikely outcomes. Chun absorbed these financial assessments of her capabilities while noting how easily veteran soldiers converted her upcoming attempt into entertainment that assumed predictable failure, their confidence in negative outcomes reflecting experience watching similar challenges defeat more qualified candidates. The betting represented more than amusement. It demonstrated systematic underestimation based on statistical analysis that favored experience over determination when facing distances that amplified every small imperfection in technique. Equipment preparation became an exercise in systematic verification that eliminated mechanical variables, while highlighting human limitations that no amount of technological advancement could overcome when facing challenges designed to test exceptional capability under extraordinary conditions. Master Sergeant Davis examined rifles with methodical attention to detail, his inspection process revealing how perfect equipment couldn't guarantee successful outcomes when atmospheric conditions transformed reliable calculations into desperate approximations. Withdrawal options appeared with increasing frequency as authority figures offered face-saving alternatives to candidates who might prefer avoiding public failure rather than risking reputation against challenges that had defeated more experienced marksmen. Captain Foster positioned himself near the equipment area with documentation that outlined alternative qualification paths, his presence serving as a reminder that reasonable soldiers sometimes chose achievable goals over legendary aspirations that carried high probability of disappointment. The rookie maintained quiet determination while observing these systematic attempts to manage her expectations, understanding that legendary distances demanded more than conventional preparation or standard equipment. Her rifle case remained balanced against her shoulder like familiar weight that had accompanied her through every training evolution, its worn leather handle reflecting countless hours of practice that would soon face the ultimate test of whether determination could overcome statistical probability. Range conditions continued deteriorating as afternoon heat created atmospheric distortion that made target acquisition increasingly difficult for shooters who preferred stable conditions and predictable variables. Heat waves rose from concrete like visible reminders of environmental challenges that transformed comfortable training into survival tests where minor atmospheric variations became decisive factors in determining success or failure against distances that demanded perfect execution. Authority figures multiplied their cautionary assessments with professional responsibility that required honest evaluation of rookie chances against challenges that had humbled experts. Their warnings designed to prepare inexperienced candidates for reality while maintaining training standards that protected institutional reputation. The legendary distance represented more than shooting challenge. It served as benchmark for measuring exceptional performance under conditions that revealed character as much as capability when pressure mounted and public observation intensified expectations beyond comfortable limits. Peak skepticism settled over the range like afternoon shadows, creating an atmosphere where doubt had crystallized into certainty among veteran observers who positioned themselves to witness what they confidently predicted would be another demonstration of legendary distance invincibility. The betting pools had reached substantial proportions as more spectators arrived to observe the rookie's attempt, their financial investments reflecting collective judgment that favored mathematical probability over optimistic determination when facing challenges that had defeated more qualified candidates. Explicit predictions of failure multiplied with systematic precision as experienced marksmen shared detailed assessments of where and how the rookie's attempt would fall short of legendary standards. Their conversations carrying the authority of professionals who understood ballistics limitations and atmospheric complications that transformed confident calculations into frustrated approximations. Staff Sergeant Wilson positioned himself near the spotting scope while explaining trajectory mathematics to anyone willing to listen, his analysis suggesting that perfect conditions couldn't compensate for experience deficits when distances amplified every minor imperfection in technique. "She'll be lucky to hit the hillside," declared Master Sergeant Rodriguez while adjusting binoculars that provided clear view of the target area. His assessment delivered with casual certainty that reflected decades of watching confident attempts dissolve into embarrassing misses. The wind patterns alone will push her shot off course by margins that scope adjustments can't predict, and that's assuming she manages proper elevation compensation for distance that stretches ballistics calculations beyond comfortable ranges. Lieutenant Chun observed these detailed predictions while maintaining the quiet confidence that had carried her through previous challenges, understanding that legendary distances demanded capabilities that conventional assessments couldn't measure accurately. Around her, conversations continued reinforcing mathematical reality with professional authority that left little room for optimistic outcomes when facing challenges designed to separate good marksmen from those whose achievements created lasting institutional memory. Larger audiences gathered with the systematic efficiency of soldiers who recognized entertainment value in witnessing legendary distance attempts, their presence adding psychological pressure to technical challenges that already tested human limitations under conditions that offered no margin for minor errors. The concrete bleachers that overlooked the range began filling with spectators who expected to observe another confirmation of why some distances remained beyond rookie capabilities regardless of determination or preparation quality. Captain Morrison approached with documentation that contained detailed analysis of environmental factors affecting afternoon shooting conditions, his data supporting skeptical assessments, while highlighting atmospheric complications that made successful attempts increasingly unlikely as daily temperature variations created thermal disturbances. Current wind readings indicate gusting patterns that change direction every 3 to 4 minutes, he announced while consulting instruments that measured atmospheric conditions with scientific precision. Combined with heat distortion and elevation variables, these factors create shooting conditions that challenge expert marksmen under optimal circumstances. The rookie absorbed these technical assessments while examining equipment that would soon face the ultimate test of whether advanced technology could compensate for experience limitations when atmospheric conditions transformed reliable calculations into desperate guesswork. Her rifle represented the finest precision shooting technology available, yet the statistics remained stubbornly resistant to technological solutions when distances stretched beyond comfortable ranges where minor variables became decisive factors. Betting conversations grew more specific as veteran observers analyzed potential failure scenarios with professional expertise that covered every conceivable way the rookie's attempt could miss its intended target. Their detailed predictions reflecting systematic understanding of ballistics physics under challenging environmental conditions. $25 says she misses left due to wind compensation errors, offered Sergeant Thompson while adding bills to the substantial pile that had accumulated through collective certainty about negative outcomes. The target itself seemed to mock confident attempts from its perch position on the distant ridge, its placement incorporating every natural obstacle that made combat shooting different from controlled training environments, where predictable conditions allowed comfortable margins for minor technical imperfections. 1,500 meters of intervening atmosphere created countless opportunities for environmental variables to deflect perfectly aimed shots into frustrating near misses that left experienced marksmen questioning fundamental assumptions about their capabilities. Authority figures multiplied their cautionary assessments with increasing specificity as afternoon conditions deteriorated beyond optimal shooting parameters. Their warnings designed to prepare the rookie for reality while protecting institutional reputation when confidence collided with mathematical limitations. General Morrison positioned himself near the command area with binoculars that would provide detailed observation of the upcoming attempt, his presence adding official weight to proceedings that had attracted attention from throughout the training facility. Range safety officers consulted documentation that outlined protocols for managing disappointed candidates whose attempts fell short of legendary standards. Their preparation reflecting institutional experience with aftermath management when optimistic predictions encountered ballistics reality under conditions that amplified every small technical error into decisive failure factors. The legendary distance had earned respect through decades of humbling experts who arrived expecting their credentials to guarantee success until mathematics proved more powerful than reputation. Environmental monitoring continued revealing atmospheric conditions that favored skeptical predictions over optimistic assessments, with wind instruments showing patterns that changed faster than human reflexes could accommodate when facing distances that demanded perfect timing and flawless execution. Heat distortion created visual complications that made target acquisition increasingly difficult for shooters who preferred stable conditions and predictable atmosphere variables that allowed comfortable compensation calculations rather than desperate approximation attempts. Technical challenge details emerged with mathematical precision as range officers consulted atmospheric monitoring equipment that revealed environmental conditions approaching the limits of what professional marksmen considered acceptable for legendary distance attempts. Wind measurements showed gusting patterns that exceeded comfortable compensation ranges, while temperature differentials created thermal disturbances that would challenge even expert shooters under optimal circumstances, transforming an already difficult shot into something that bordered on impossible for anyone lacking extensive combat experience. Environmental factors multiplied the complexity with systematic efficiency that favored skeptical predictions over optimistic assessments, each atmospheric variable adding layers of difficulty that conventional training rarely addressed in combination with distances that amplified minor calculation errors into decisive misfactors. Major Davis examined meteorological data while explaining ballistics complications to assembled observers, his analysis supporting collective doubt about rookie capabilities when facing challenges that had defeated more qualified candidates under better conditions. The elevation change between firing position and target created ballistics complications that stretched standard calculation methods beyond comfortable accuracy ranges, requiring compensations that experienced marksmen sometimes misjudged when atmospheric pressure variations affected trajectory mathematics. in ways that scope adjustments couldn't entirely predict. Staff Sergeant Martinez positioned himself near the range equipment while explaining technical challenges that made legendary distance attempts different from conventional qualification courses where predictable conditions allowed reliable calculation methods. Temperature differential readings indicated thermal layering that would create bullet path disturbances invisible to naked observation, but decisive in determining whether perfectly aimed shots reached intended targets or missed by margins that left experienced marksmen questioning fundamental assumptions about their technical competence. The afternoon heat had created atmospheric conditions that transformed reliable equipment into instruments requiring constant recalibration as environmental variables changed faster than human reflexes could accommodate through manual adjustments. Range instrumentation provided real-time data about conditions that professional marksmen recognized as approaching the threshold beyond which successful legendary distance attempts became statistical anomalies rather than achievable goals through skilled preparation and advanced equipment. Captain Rodriguez consulted digital displays while announcing readings that supported skeptical assessments, his technical analysis reinforcing collective certainty that rookie attempts under current conditions would likely result in disappointment rather than legendary achievement. Atmospheric pressure variations added complications that stretch ballistics mathematics beyond comfortable prediction ranges, creating shooting conditions where minor miscalculations became decisive factors in determining success or failure against distances that demanded perfect execution under circumstances that offered no margin for the small errors that shorter ranges typically forgave. The legendary distance had earned its reputation through systematic resistance to technological solutions when environmental variables multiplied beyond manageable limits. Equipment calibration became an exercise in compensating for atmospheric conditions that challenged the limits of precision shooting technology, with advanced optics struggling to maintain clarity through heat distortion that made target acquisition increasingly difficult as afternoon temperatures created visual complications. Master Sergeant Thompson examined scope adjustments while explaining technical limitations that even perfect equipment couldn't overcome when facing distances that transformed minor atmospheric variations into major trajectory influences. Wind pattern analysis revealed shifting currents that changed direction and velocity across the 1,500-meter distance, with frequency that made compensation calculations extremely difficult for shooters accustomed to predictable conditions where atmospheric variables remained relatively stable throughout shooting sequences. The flags dotting the course showed different readings at various points, creating a complex pattern of air movement that would require intuitive responses rather than calculated adjustments when facing challenges that demanded split-second timing. Final setup elements highlighted every natural obstacle that made the legendary distance different from controlled training environments, where consistent conditions allowed comfortable margins for minor technical imperfections that became decisive factors when distances amplified every small error into significant missed potential. The target placement incorporated terrain features that created additional complications beyond simple distance calculations, requiring shooters to compensate for elevation changes and atmospheric variations simultaneously. Lieutenant Chun absorbed these technical details while examining her rifle with methodical attention that reflected understanding of equipment limitations when facing challenges that demanded perfect execution under conditions that tested human capabilities as much as technological advancement. Around her, conversations continued reinforcing mathematical reality with professional authority that left little room for optimistic predictions when atmospheric variables multiplied beyond comfortable calculation ranges. Range safety protocols activated with systematic efficiency as officials prepared for potential disappointment management when confidence encountered ballistics reality under conditions that favored experienced skepticism over rookie determination. The legendary distance represented more than shooting challenge. It served as ultimate test of whether advanced preparation could overcome mathematical probability when environmental factors aligned against successful outcomes. Atmospheric monitoring continued revealing conditions that challenged the limits of what professional marksmen considered acceptable for precision shooting at distances that stretched equipment capabilities beyond comfortable performance ranges. The combination of wind variations, temperature differentials, elevation changes, and heat distortion created a perfect storm of environmental challenges that would test every aspect of marksmanship skill, while offering countless opportunities for minor errors to become decisive failure factors during the upcoming attempt that had attracted attention from throughout the facility. Maximum doubt crystallized into verbal certainty as veteran marksmen positioned themselves to witness what they confidently predicted would be another demonstration of legendary distance invincibility, their conversations carrying the weight of professional experience that had taught them to recognize impossible challenges disguised as achievable goals. The assembled observers represented decades of combined shooting expertise, and their collective assessment supported mathematical probability over optimistic determination when facing distances that had humbled experts under better conditions than current atmospheric readings indicated. "She won't even come close to the target frame," declared Sergeant Major Williams while adjusting his binoculars to provide clear observation of the anticipated miss. His prediction delivered with casual certainty that reflected years of watching confident attempts dissolve into embarrassing failures. "The wind alone will push her shot off course by at least 3 feet, assuming she manages proper elevation compensation, which is unlikely given her experience level with distances that stretch ballistics calculations beyond rookie comprehension." Specific predictions multiplied with systematic precision as experienced professionals shared detailed assessments of exactly where and how the rookie's attempt would fail to achieve legendary standards. Their analysis covering every conceivable error scenario that atmospheric conditions and distance mathematics could produce when inexperience met challenges designed to test exceptional capability. Master Sergeant Rodriguez positioned himself near the spotting equipment while explaining trajectory complications that would likely result in spectacular misses rather than respectable near attempts. The betting pool reached unprecedented proportions as more spectators arrived from throughout the training facility, their financial investments reflecting collective judgment that favored established patterns over unlikely exceptions when facing challenges that maintained consistent failure rates regardless of individual determination or advanced preparation. $75 says she misses by more than 5 feet, offered Captain Morrison while adding substantial bills to the growing pile with confidence that suggested mathematical certainty rather than gambling speculation. Lieutenant Chun observed these financial predictions of her failure while maintaining quiet focus that had sustained her through previous challenges, understanding that legendary distances demanded capabilities that statistical analysis couldn't measure accurately when determination met preparation under conditions that tested character as much as technical skill. Around her, conversations continued building consensus that rookie attempts under current atmospheric conditions represented optimistic fantasy rather than achievable reality. Largest assembly of skeptical witnesses gathered with systematic efficiency as word spread throughout the facility about the upcoming legendary distance attempt, their presence adding psychological pressure to technical challenges that already stretched human limitations beyond comfortable performance ranges. The observation area filled with professionals who expected to witness educational confirmation of why some distances remained beyond rookie capabilities regardless of equipment quality or determination level. Authority figures expressed increasing concern about potential disappointment when optimistic predictions encountered ballistics reality under conditions that favored experienced skepticism over academic preparation. Their warnings designed to manage expectations while protecting institutional reputation when confidence collided with mathematical limitations. Colonel Patterson approached with documentation that contained detailed analysis of atmospheric factors affecting current shooting conditions, his assessment supporting collective doubt about successful outcomes. Most specific articulation of impossibility emerged through technical discussions that covered every environmental variable affecting legendary distance attempts under current conditions, with meteorological data supporting predictions that even expert marksmen would struggle to achieve respectable performance when atmospheric complications multiplied beyond manageable calculation ranges. The combination of wind patterns, temperature variations, elevation factors, and heat distortion created shooting conditions that challenged fundamental assumptions about achievable accuracy at distances that demanded perfect execution. Professional conversations focused on failure probability with mathematical precision that left little room for optimistic assessments when facing challenges that had maintained consistent defeat rates among marksmen whose credentials suggested certain success, until environmental reality proved more powerful than reputation or advanced equipment. Staff Sergeant Davis consulted atmospheric monitoring instruments while explaining why current conditions exceeded acceptable parameters for precision shooting at distances that tested technological limits. Range observers positioned themselves with clear sight lines to the target area. Their binoculars and spotting scopes focused on the distant ridge where they expected to observe another miss that would join the statistical majority of documented legendary distance failures. The target seemed impossibly small from the firing line, its dimensions challenging visual acquisition even through advanced optics that struggled with atmospheric distortion created by afternoon heat patterns. Verbal certainty reached peak intensity as experienced marksmen shared final assessments that covered every technical aspect of why the rookie's attempt would likely result in spectacular failure rather than legendary achievement. Their collective wisdom supporting mathematical probability when atmospheric variables aligned against successful outcomes. The legendary distance had earned respect through decades of systematic resistance to optimistic predictions regardless of individual preparation quality or equipment advancement. Atmospheric conditions continued deteriorating beyond optimal shooting parameters as heat distortion increased and wind patterns became more unpredictable, creating environmental challenges that would test expert capabilities while offering countless opportunities for minor errors to become decisive misfactors. The range had become a theater where experience prepared to witness another confirmation that some challenges remained beyond rookie determination when facing distances that separated professional competence from legendary performance under extraordinary conditions that demanded perfect execution. Pre-shot tension accumulated like atmospheric pressure before a storm as Lieutenant Chun approached the designated firing position. Her movement through the assembled observers creating ripples of anticipation that mixed skeptical excitement with professional curiosity about how quickly the anticipated failure would materialize under conditions that challenged expert capabilities. The concrete firing platform felt solid beneath her boots, providing stable foundation for an attempt that statistical analysis suggested would join the majority of documented legendary distance misses rather than the exceptional minority of recorded successes. Detailed descriptions of the legendary distan CE target emerged through spotting scope observations that revealed just how challenging visual acquisition would be even before atmospheric complications began affecting trajectory calculations, the distant ridge making the standard military target appear impossibly small through heat distortion that wavered like water across the 1,500-meter gap. Master Sergeant Collins adjusted the high-powered scope while providing commentary that reinforced collective skepticism about rookie chances when facing challenges that tested equipment limitations as much as human capability. The target itself seemed to mock confident attempts from its elevated position that incorporated every natural obstacle designed to simulate combat shooting conditions rather than comfortable training environments where predictable variables allowed reliable calculation methods. Elevation changes created ballistics complications that stretched standard compensation formulas beyond rookie comprehension, while terrain features added visual challenges that made precise aiming extremely difficult even for experienced marksmen using advanced optical equipment under optimal atmospheric conditions. Final opportunity to withdraw appeared with systematic regularity as authority figures offered face-saving alternatives that would allow the rookie to avoid public failure, while preserving reputation for future challenges that might prove more suitable to current experience levels. Captain Rodriguez positioned himself near the equipment area with documentation outlining alternative qualification paths, his presence serving as professional reminder that reasonable soldiers sometimes chose achievable goals over legendary aspirations that carried high probability of disappointment and potential career implications. You understand this represents an extremely challenging shot under current atmospheric conditions. General Morrison announced, while approaching the firing position with measured authority that reflected decades of experience managing disappointed marksmen whose confidence had exceeded their capabilities. The failure rate among experienced combat veterans approaches 87% under similar environmental parameters, and current wind patterns suggest conditions that would challenge expert marksmanship even with perfect equipment calibration and optimal timing. The rookie acknowledged these cautionary assessments while examining her rifle with methodical attention that reflected understanding of equipment limitations when facing distances that demanded perfect execution under circumstances that offered no margin for minor technical errors. Her scope adjustments incorporated atmospheric readings that changed faster than manual compensations could accommodate, requiring intuitive responses to environmental variables that conventional training rarely addressed in combination with legendary distance mathematics. Atmospheric monitoring instruments provided real-time confirmation that shooting conditions continued deteriorating beyond parameters that professional marksmen considered acceptable for precision attempts at distances where minor calculation errors became decisive misfactors. Wind velocity measurements showed gusting patterns that exceeded comfortable compensation ranges, while temperature differential readings indicated thermal disturbances that would affect bullet trajectory in ways that scope adjustments couldn't entirely predict or eliminate through technical solutions. Range safety officers consulted protocols designed to manage aftermath when optimistic predictions encounter ballistics reality under conditions that favored mathematical probability over individual determination. Their preparation reflecting institutional experience with disappointment management when confidence collided with atmospheric limitations. The legendary distance had earned institutional respect through systematic resistance to technological solutions when environmental variables multiplied beyond human calculation capabilities. Equipment preparation reached completion as the rookie verified scope settings that represented her best technical approximation of atmospheric compensation requirements, understanding that advanced optics couldn't overcome fundamental limitations when distances stretched ballistics mathematics beyond comfortable prediction ranges. The rifle represented finest precision shooting technology available, yet statistics remained stubbornly resistant to equipment solutions when facing challenges that demanded intuitive responses to rapidly changing environmental conditions. Observation positions filled with professionals who expected to witness another educational demonstration of why some distances remained beyond rookie capabilities regardless of preparation quality or determination level. Their presence adding psychological pressure to technical challenges that already tested human limitations under circumstances that amplified every small imperfection in technique. The assembled expertise represented decades of combined shooting experience that supported collective skepticism about successful outcomes when atmospheric variables aligned against optimistic predictions. Target acquisition became increasingly difficult as afternoon heat created visual distortion that challenged optical equipment designed for precision shooting under control conditions. The distant target wavering through atmospheric interference that made consistent aiming extremely challenging even for shooters accustomed to difficult environmental variables. The legendary distance demanded capabilities that extended beyond conventional training progression into territory reserved for exceptional performers under extraordinary circumstances. Final atmospheric readings confirmed conditions that exceeded optimal shooting parameters by margins that professional assessment suggested would challenge expert capabilities while offering countless opportunities for environmental variables to deflect perfectly calculated shots into frustrating near misses. The combination of technical challenges and atmospheric complications created perfect conditions for another confirmation of legendary distance invincibility when rookie determination met mathematical reality under circumstances designed to test exceptional capability. The approach to the shooting position felt like walking through a corridor of skeptical judgment as Lieutenant Shun moved past assembled observers whose conversations had crystallized into unanimous certainty about her impending failure. Their professional assessments creating an atmosphere where mathematical probability seemed more reliable than individual determination when facing distances that had maintained consistent defeat rates regardless of equipment advancement or preparation quality. Each step toward the firing line carried weight of collective expectation that favored disappointment over legendary achievement under atmospheric conditions that challenged expert capabilities. Detailed preparation began with systematic verification of equipment settings that represented her best technical approximation of compensation requirements for environmental variables that changed faster than manual adjustments could accommodate. The scope dials reflecting calculations that stretch ballistics mathematics beyond comfortable prediction ranges where minor errors became decisive misfactors. Her rifle felt familiar despite representing technology designed for precision shooting under controlled conditions rather than atmospheric chaos that transformed reliable calculations into desperate approximations of trajectory mathematics. Building suspense accumulated throughout. Observer positioning as professionals arranged themselves to provide optimal viewing angles for what they confidently expected would be another educational demonstration of legendary distance invincibility. Their binoculars and spotting scopes focused on target areas where they anticipated observing spectacular misses rather than respectable attempts. The concrete observation platform filled with expertise that supported collective skepticism through decades of combined experience, watching confident predictions dissolve into frustrated acceptance of mathematical limitations. 17 skeptical faces watched with professional attention that mixed curiosity about failure specifics with confidence in negative outcomes, when rookie determination met atmospheric reality under conditions that exceeded optimal shooting parameters by margins that challenged fundamental assumptions about achievable accuracy. Master Sergeant Williams positioned his spotting scope while providing commentary that reinforced collective certainty about impending disappointment. His analysis covering technical factors that made successful attempts statistical anomalies rather than achievable goals through skilled preparation. Whispered predictions of failure multiplied with systematic precision as experienced marksmen shared final assessments about exactly where and how the rookie's shot would miss its intended target. Their conversations reflecting professional judgment based on atmospheric monitoring that indicated conditions beyond acceptable ranges for precision shooting at distances that tested technological limits. The betting pools had reached substantial proportions through collective financial investment in mathematical probability over optimistic speculation about unlikely exceptions to established patterns. She settles into position like someone who actually knows what she's doing, observed Sergeant Thompson while adjusting his binoculars for clear observation of the anticipated miss. His comment, carrying undertones of surprise that rookie technique appeared more competent than expected despite atmospheric challenges that would test expert capabilities. But knowing proper form doesn't compensate for experience deficits when environmental variables multiply beyond calculation ranges that conventional training addresses through academic rather than practical instruction methods. The shooting position provided stable platform for an attempt that technical analysis suggested would face overwhelming challenges from atmospheric conditions that created perfect storm scenarios where multiple environmental variables aligned against successful outcomes, each factor adding layers of difficulty that stretched human capabilities beyond comfortable performance ranges. Wind patterns continued, showing unpredictable variations that made compensation calculations extremely difficult for shooters accustomed to manageable atmospheric conditions. Equipment verification reached completion as the rookie made final scope adjustments that incorporated real-time atmospheric readings, her movements reflecting methodical approach that surprised observers who had expected nervous uncertainty rather than confident preparation when facing challenges that demanded intuitive responses to rapidly changing environmental variables. The rifle represented finest precision technology available, yet statistics remained resistant to equipment solutions when distances amplified minor imperfections into decisive failure factors. Professional observers maintained confident skepticism while acknowledging that rookie preparation appeared more systematic than anticipated, their assessments balancing recognition of competent technique against mathematical reality that favored experienced predictions over optimistic outcomes when atmospheric complications multiplied beyond manageable limits. The legendary distance had earned respect through decades of humbling marksmen whose credentials suggested certain success, until environmental variables proved more powerful than reputation or advanced preparation. Range atmosphere intensified as final preparations approached completion, with assembled expertise creating psychological pressure that added human elements to technical challenges already stretching capabilities beyond comfortable ranges where minor calculation errors became decisive misfactors. The observation area buzzed with conversations that reinforced collective certainty about negative outcomes, while expressing professional curiosity about specific failure mechanisms that atmospheric conditions would likely produce during the upcoming attempt. Atmospheric monitoring continued, revealing environmental variables that exceeded optimal parameters for precision shooting at distances that demanded perfect execution under circumstances, offering no margin for small errors that shorter ranges typically forgave through comfortable accuracy tolerances. Temperature differentials created thermal disturbances invisible to observation, but decisive in determining whether calculated trajectories reached intended targets or missed by margins that left experienced marksmen questioning fundamental assumptions about their technical competence. Final moments before the attempt built tension that mixed professional interest in educational failure demonstration with atmosphere pressure that seemed to press against human capability when facing challenges designed to separate good marksmen from those whose achievements created lasting institutional memory. The legendary distance represented ultimate test of whether determination could overcome mathematical probability when environmental factors aligned against successful outcomes under conditions that challenged technological solutions. The shooting sequence began with deliberate precision as Lieutenant Shun settled into the firing position that had witnessed more legendary distance failures than successes, her movements reflecting systematic preparation that surprised observers who had expected nervous uncertainty rather than confident execution when facing atmospheric conditions that challenged expert capabilities under optimal circumstances. The concrete platform felt solid beneath her prone position, providing stable foundation for an attempt that mathematical analysis suggested would join the statistical majority of documented misses rather than the extraordinary minority of recorded achievements. Detailed technical execution unfolded through methodical scope alignment that incorporated real-time atmospheric readings into ballistics calculations stretched beyond comfortable prediction ranges, each adjustment reflecting understanding of environmental variables that conventional training addressed through academic theory rather than practical application under challenging field conditions. Her breathing pattern established rhythm that experienced marksmen recognized as professional technique despite skeptical assessments about rookie capability when facing distances that amplified minor imperfections into decisive failure factors. Building suspense accumulated through observer silence as professional conversations ceased and assembled expertise focused attention on target acquisition that appeared increasingly difficult through heat distortion wavering across 1,500 meters of intervening atmosphere. The distant ridge seemed to shimmer through optical equipment designed for precision shooting under controlled conditions, creating visual challenges that made consistent aiming extremely difficult even for shooters accustomed to managing environmental complications through advanced technical solutions. Atmospheric conditions continued presenting obstacles that stretched human capabilities beyond comfortable performance ranges as wind patterns shifted with unpredictable frequency that made compensation calculations extremely challenging for marksmen accustomed to manageable variables rather than perfect storm scenarios where multiple environmental factors aligned against successful outcomes. Temperature differentials created thermal disturbances invisible to naked observation, but decisive in determining whether perfectly calculated trajectories would reach intended targets or miss by margins that humbled experienced professionals. Equipment performance reached technological limits as advanced optics struggled with atmospheric interference that challenged fundamental assumptions about achievable accuracy when environmental variables multiplied beyond calculation ranges that scope adjustments could accommodate through manual compensation methods. The rifle represented finest precision shooting technology available. Yet conditions demanded intuitive responses to rapidly changing atmospheric patterns that exceeded systematic preparation capabilities regardless of equipment advancement or theoretical knowledge depth. Professional observers maintained confident skepticism while acknowledging systematic execution that appeared more competent than anticipated. Their assessments balancing recognition of proper technique against mathematical reality that favored experienced predictions over optimistic speculation when facing challenges that had maintained consistent defeat rates among marksmen whose credentials suggested certain success until environmental limitations proved more decisive than reputation or advanced preparation quality. She settles into position with movements that reflected methodical training, her body alignment achieving stability that impressed observers despite collective certainty about negative outcomes when rookie determination met atmospheric reality under conditions exceeding optimal shooting parameters. The scope adjustments incorporated compensation calculations that stretched ballistics mathematics beyond comfortable ranges where minor errors became decisive misfactors. Each dial movement representing technical approximation of environmental variables that changed faster than human reflexes could accommodate. Range atmosphere intensified as final preparation approached completion, with assembled expertise creating psychological pressure that added human elements to technical challenges already testing capabilities beyond manageable limits, where atmospheric complications transformed reliable calculations into desperate approximations of trajectory mathematics. The observation area maintained expectant silence that mixed professional curiosity about specific failure mechanisms with confident certainty about negative outcomes when facing distances that separated good marksmen from legendary performers. Trigger control preparation began with breathing regulation that established rhythm recognized by experienced observers as competent technique despite maintained skepticism about rookie capability when environmental variables exceeded calculation ranges that conventional training addressed through controlled practice rather than challenging field conditions. Her finger placement reflected systematic instruction that surprised veterans who had expected nervous uncertainty rather than confident execution when facing atmospheric challenges that tested expert capabilities under optimal circumstances. Final scope verification incorporated atmospheric readings that indicated conditions continuing to deteriorate beyond parameters that professional assessment considered acceptable for precision shooting at distances demanding perfect execution under circumstances offering no margin for small technical errors. Wind velocity measurements showed patterns that exceeded comfortable compensation ranges, while temperature variations created thermal disturbances affecting trajectory calculations in ways that manual adjustments couldn't entirely predict or eliminate through technological solutions. Sight picture acquisition challenged visual capabilities as heat distortion created wavering effects that made target definition extremely difficult through optical equipment struggling with atmospheric interference beyond design specifications for controlled shooting environments. The distant target appeared impossibly small through conditions that transformed advanced optics into instruments requiring constant recalibration as environmental variables changed faster than manual compensation could accommodate during extended aiming sequences. Atmospheric monitoring provided final confirmation that shooting conditions exceeded optimal parameters by margins suggesting that even expert marksmen would struggle to achieve respectable performance when facing perfect storm scenarios where multiple environmental factors aligned against successful outcomes. The legendary distance had earned institutional respect through systematic resistance to optimistic predictions regardless of individual preparation quality or equipment advancement when atmospheric variables multiplied beyond human calculation capabilities. The shot execution arrived with sudden finality as Lieutenant Chen's finger completed its deliberate squeeze. The trigger braking with mechanical precision that released carefully calculated energy through ballistics mathematics stretched beyond comfortable prediction ranges into territory where atmospheric variables determined whether 15 months of preparation would result in legendary achievement or join the statistical majority of documented failures that had humbled more experienced marksmen under better conditions than current environmental readings indicated. Immediate aftermath suspended time in crystalline silence as 17 pairs of eyes tracked invisible projectile trajectory across 1,500 meters of intervening atmosphere thick with heat distortion and unpredictable wind patterns that had defeated expert attempts throughout the quarter. Each observer holding breath, while mathematical probability competed against determination under circumstances that challenged fundamental assumptions about achievable accuracy when environmental variables multiplied beyond technological compensation capabilities. The distant ridge seemed to shimmer through optical equipment as assembled expertise waited for target confirmation that would either validate collective skepticism or force recalibration of everything they believed about rookie capabilities when facing challenges designed to separate professional competence from legendary performance under extraordinary conditions. Spotting scopes focused on target areas where statistical analysis suggested another miss would materialize, reinforcing institutional wisdom about legendary distance invincibility regardless of individual preparation quality. Stunned silence expanded across the range like shock waves as the spotter's voice cracked through atmospheric tension with words that contradicted mathematical probability and decades of professional experience, watching confident attempts dissolve into frustrated acceptance of ballistics limitations. "Hit," he announced, his single syllable cutting through skeptical certainty like revelation that transformed assumptions about impossible achievements into undeniable reality that demanded immediate recalibration of rookie assessment criteria. General Morrison's frozen reaction reflected institutional shock as established patterns collapsed under weight of evidence that challenged fundamental beliefs about experience requirements for legendary distance success, his weathered features expressing disbelief that mathematical probability had yielded to determination backed by preparation quality that conventional assessment methods couldn't measure accurately. The clipboard containing statistical documentation slipped from fingers suddenly nerveless, clattering against concrete with sound that punctuated transformation of collective certainty into stunned recognition. Professional observers struggled with cognitive recalibration as witnessed achievement forced reassessment of rookie capabilities that had seemed mathematically impossible under atmospheric conditions, exceeding optimal parameters by margins that challenged expert performance under controlled circumstances. Master Sergeant Williams lowered his binoculars with movements that reflected fundamental surprise at evidence contradicting decades of experience, watching legendary distance attempts fail against environmental variables that appeared insurmountable for marksmen lacking extensive combat experience. The target confirmation arrived through multiple verification sources as spotting equipment provided undeniable documentation that rookie determination had achieved what statistical analysis suggested remained beyond current capability levels when facing atmospheric challenges that had defeated more qualified candidates throughout the training quarter. Range instrumentation recorded trajectory data that would require technical analysis to understand how environmental compensation had succeeded where expert calculations typically failed under similar conditions. Atmospheric conditions that had seemed to guarantee failure proved insufficient to defeat preparation quality that extended beyond conventional training progression into territory where systematic dedication overcame mathematical probability through execution precision that challenged fundamental assumptions about experience requirements for legendary achievement. The perfect storm scenario had met perfect preparation backed by determination that refused to accept statistical limitations as absolute boundaries. Equipment verification confirmed that advanced technology had performed within design specifications, while human capability had exceeded predicted parameters through technical execution that surprised professional observers accustomed to watching atmospheric variables defeat even expert attempts at distances demanding perfect timing under challenging environmental conditions. The rifle had delivered precisely calculated energy through ballistics mathematics stretched to theoretical limits, yet proven achievable through systematic preparation. Witness reactions multiplied through range personnel who had gathered expecting educational demonstration of legendary distance invincibility, only to observe achievement that contradicted institutional wisdom about rookie limitations when facing challenges that maintained consistent defeat rates regardless of individual determination or preparation quality. Conversations ceased as assembled expertise processed evidence that forced reassessment of fundamental assumptions about experience requirements for exceptional performance under extraordinary circumstances. Statistical probability had yielded to individual capability in demonstration that challenged mathematical certainty while providing educational experience about determination backed by systematic preparation when facing obstacles that appeared insurmountable through conventional assessment methods. The legendary distance had maintained its reputation through decades of defeating confident attempts. Yet rookie achievement proved that statistical patterns couldn't account for exceptional preparation quality combined with execution precision under pressure. Range atmosphere transformed as collective skepticism dissolved into recognition that witnessed achievement represented more than statistical anomaly, instead demonstrating capability that conventional evaluation methods couldn't measure accurately when determination met preparation under conditions designed to test exceptional performance. The 1500-meter target had yielded to rookie precision in demonstration that would require institutional recalibration of assessment criteria for legendary distance qualification. Professional acknowledgement began emerging through observer reactions that reflected fundamental surprise at evidence contradicting established patterns while forcing recognition that exceptional achievement remained possible when systematic preparation met atmospheric challenges through execution quality that exceeded predicted parameters. The legendary shot had found its mark despite environmental variables that statistical analysis suggested would guarantee failure, proving that mathematical probability provided incomplete prediction of human capability when determination refused to accept limitations. Transformed dynamics emerged across the range as collective skepticism yielded to undeniable recognition that rookie determination had achieved what mathematical analysis suggested remained impossible under atmospheric conditions that had defeated more experienced marksmen throughout the training quarter, forcing institutional recalibration of assessment criteria that failed to account for exceptional preparation quality when systematic dedication met legendary distance challenges through execution precision that exceeded all predicted parameters. Recognition from former doubters materialized through conversations that reflected fundamental surprise at witnessed achievement contradicting decades of professional experience watching confident attempts dissolve into frustrated acceptance of ballistics limitations, their voices carrying new respect for capability that conventional evaluation methods couldn't measure accurately when facing distances that separated good marksmen from those whose names appeared in institutional memory as legendary performers under extraordinary circumstances. General Morrison approached the firing position with measured steps that reflected cognitive processing of evidence that challenged fundamental assumptions about experience requirements for exceptional achievement. His weathered features expressing transformation from confident skepticism to respectful acknowledgement of capability demonstrated under conditions exceeding optimal shooting parameters. Lieutenant Shun, he began, his voice carrying institutional authority, tempered by genuine surprise at witnessing performance that statistical analysis had suggested remained beyond rookie possibility. The legendary capability demonstrated here represents achievement that will require documentation in training records as exceptional performance under challenging environmental conditions. The general continued while examining target confirmation data that provided undeniable evidence of precision shooting executed through systematic preparation backed by determination that refused to accept mathematical limitations as absolute boundaries when facing distances that tested technological limits. As much as human capability, change behavior from authority figures reflected institutional adjustment to evidence that rookie assessment criteria required fundamental revision when exceptional individuals demonstrated capabilities that extended beyond conventional training progression into territory where statistical probability yielded to systematic dedication combined with execution quality under pressure that challenged expert performance standards. Professional conversations shifted from skeptical predictions to analytical discussion of technical factors that enabled successful achievement where atmospheric variables had defeated qualified attempts. Staff Sergeant Williams consulted his documentation while acknowledging assessment errors that reflected institutional bias toward experience over preparation quality when evaluating candidate capability for legendary distance challenges that demanded more than conventional qualifications could measure through standard evaluation methods. The shot execution demonstrated technical competence that surprised professional observers accustomed to watching rookie attempts fail against environmental complications that stretch ballistics mathematics beyond comfortable prediction ranges. Verbal recognition of capability emerged through range personnel who had gathered expecting educational demonstration of legendary distance invincibility only to witness achievement that forced reassessment of fundamental assumptions about individual potential when determination met systematic preparation under conditions designed to test exceptional performance beyond normal qualification standards. Master Sergeant Rodriguez examined ballistics data while expressing professional acknowledgement that rookie classification had proven inadequate for describing demonstrated capability. Apologies for underestimation appeared through conversations that reflected institutional recognition of assessment failures when conventional evaluation methods encountered exceptional individuals whose preparation quality extended beyond standard training progression into territory where mathematical probability provided incomplete prediction of human capability under challenging circumstances. The betting pools dissolved as financial investments in failure probability proved incorrect when systematic dedication overcame atmospheric obstacles that had maintained consistent defeat rates. New dynamic in professional relationships established itself as institutional hierarchy adapted to evidence that experience requirements for legendary achievement needed recalibration when exceptional preparation met determination under conditions that tested fundamental assumptions about achievable accuracy at distances demanding perfect execution. Lieutenant Chun had earned recognition that transcended rookie classification through demonstrated capability under extraordinary circumstances that challenged technological limits as much as human performance standards. Range atmosphere completed its transformation as collective understanding shifted from skeptical certainty to respectful acknowledgement of achievement that would require institutional documentation as exceptional performance under challenging environmental conditions. The legendary distance having yielded to preparation quality that extended beyond conventional assessment methods into territory where systematic dedication proved more decisive than statistical probability when facing obstacles. Designed to test extraordinary capability, training facility personnel gathered to witness confirmation of achievement that contradicted institutional wisdom about rookie limitations while providing educational experience about individual potential when determination refused to accept mathematical boundaries as absolute restrictions on human capability under pressure that challenged fundamental assumptions about experience requirements for legendary performance. The 1500-meter target bore evidence of precision that would reshape evaluation criteria for future legendary distance attempts. If you enjoyed witnessing this moment where determination met legendary challenge, please drop a comment and let us know your favorite part of the story, or share if you've seen similar demonstrations of hidden capability that surprised everyone who witnessed them. Professional acknowledgement reached completion as institutional recognition settled into new understanding that exceptional individuals could achieve legendary performance regardless of experience classification when systematic preparation met atmospheric challenges through execution quality that exceeded predicted parameters, forcing recalibration of assessment methods that had failed to account for determination backed by preparation extending beyond conventional training standards into territory where mathematical probability yielded to human capability under extraordinary circumstances that tested fundamental assumptions about achievable accuracy.